Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to take a close look at artificial intelligence and policy. Specifically, something pretty significant happening over in Japan.
That's right.
We're diving into their proposed new legislation on AI. We've been looking at an article that, walks us through the Japan AI bill and where it's heading.
Yeah, and this isn't just some small tweak. If this goes through, it could really be Japan's first comprehensive national legal framework just for AI. It's a big deal.
Okay, so our goal here for this deep dive is to really get past the headlines, past the dense legal text, and understand the story. Like, what are the key parts of this potential law? What's making Japan move on this now? And really importantly, what does their approach signal? Not just for them, but, from anyone watching, how different countries are trying to handle this super fast-moving technology.
Absolutely. Especially if you're involved in policy or public service yourself, seeing these different global strategies unfold is, well, it's invaluable.
Exactly. So we're going to pull out the most important bits from the source material, give you a clear picture of Japan's specific strategy for AI governance, and maybe see what lessons or comparisons pop up.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's unpack this first part. The article gives a good sense of why Japan is pushing for this major AI bill right now. What's the context? What's the driving force?
Well, the source points to sort of two main pressures. First, there's a real government push to accelerate AI innovation inside Japan. They see it as, critical for future competitiveness.
Oh, it's the economic engine kind of thing.
Exactly. But second, there's also this growing awareness of the, let's say, societal and ethical risks that come with AI becoming more common. So they need a framework to manage both sides.
And the article backs this up with some pretty striking numbers, doesn't it, about that concern, that maybe they're falling behind.
It really does, yeah. It mentions the Stanford University AI Index report, the 2025 one. And if you look at private AI investment for 2024, well, Japan's at just $0.93 billion.
Wow, okay. 0.93 billion. How does that compare?
Well, compare that to the U.S., over $109 billion.
Oh.
Or China at $9.29 billion, the U.K. at $4.52 billion. I mean, the gap is huge. Japan's lagging way behind the big players and even some neighbors.
Okay, those numbers really hammer home the investment difference. It's not subtle.
Not at all. And you see it reflected in adoption rates, too. There was a 2024 survey from Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications. It found pretty low usage, actually. Only about 9% of individuals and 47% of companies said they were using generative AI.
So you've got low investment, relatively cautious adoption. What about public feeling? Does that play a role?
Yes, the article brings that up, too. It points to government data suggesting public trust is, well, shaky. Only about 13% of people feel safe using AI under the current laws.
13%, okay.
So you put it all together, this feeling of an innovation gap, adoption that's maybe slower than hoped, and public anxiety really builds a strong case for meeting a national strategy, a clear legislative signal.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. It clarifies the pressures they're facing. You need to boost growth, but also make people feel comfortable with the technology.
Precisely. Trying to hit both targets at once.
Okay, so we understand the why. Now, the urgency, the drivers. Let's get into the bill itself. What does this proposed fundamental law actually do? What are its key pieces, according to the source?
So what's really interesting about this bill, and the article highlights this, is its nature as a fundamental law. That means it's really designed to set out guiding principles, policy directions. It's not, at this stage anyway, about slapping on direct regulations or penalties.
Oh, okay. So it's more foundational, like setting the stage, the vision, the expectations, rather than being a heavy rulebook right out of the gate.
That's the feeling, yeah. That's the core idea at this point. The article lays out some key parts, like it establishes basic principles, things like boosting international competitiveness, promoting AI development and use in a comprehensive, systematic way, ensuring transparency, fostering international cooperation, standard but important goals.
And it assigns roles, tells everyone what their job is.
Yeah, exactly. It defines responsibilities for national and local governments, research bodies, businesses, even citizens. And the source specifically notes that businesses are basically expected to use AI to improve productivity and efficiency, and also to cooperate with government policies.
So it's kind of like saying, okay, here's the roadmap for AI, here's what we expect from everyone, and businesses, you need to be playing an active part, but without immediate fines if you don't jump right in.
That's the current approach, yes. The bill also spells out specific tasks for the national government. Things like, promoting R&D, building and sharing AI infrastructure, keeping tabs on global trends, and figuring out ways to counter misuse that infringes on people's rights.
Okay.
Plus, it mandates creating a big, comprehensive national AI strategy and sets up a central coordinating body, the AI Strategy Headquarters, to oversee it all.
And just to be clear, the article states the bill itself, as it's written now, doesn't actually include penalties for not following these guidelines.
Correct. Right now, no direct penalties for noncompliance in the bill itself.
Okay. Now, the source also talks about something called a supplementary resolution. That sounds like an
Yeah.
add-on. What's
Yeah.
that about? Does it add any teeth or maybe more direction?
Right. The supplementary resolution. It's technically non-binding, legally speaking, but it's important because it outlines some really crucial considerations, especially around how the law might actually be implemented and, importantly, how ethical issues should be handled.
Okay, so not law per se, but like a strong statement of intent, areas they're really focusing on.
Exactly that. It signals priorities. The resolution stresses aligning AI development and use with Japan's existing human-centered AI society principles.
Oh, okay.
The source suggests these principles are really about protecting human dignity, promoting ethical alignment. Basically, the usual important stuff like respecting human rights, fairness, safety, privacy when you build and use AI.
So that fleshes out the ethical framework a bit more.
It does. And the resolution gets specific, too. It calls for stronger enforcement against certain misuses like deepfake pornography, particularly involving minors.
Mm-hmm. That feels very targeted.
Very. It talks about needing better ways to remove that kind of content and giving more protection to victims. It also mentions, balancing any regulatory oversight with protecting trade secrets and IP, trying not to overload businesses.
Okay.
Makes sense. However, and this is a really key point the article brings out, the resolution explicitly says the government reserves the right to consider tougher measures later on, specifically for high-risk noncompliance.
Ah. So even though it's starting soft, the resolution puts it on the table. If there are serious problems with high-risk AI, stricter rules could definitely come later. It's a warning shot, maybe.
Precisely. It keeps the door wide open for a more muscular approach down the road if they feel it's needed, especially for AI that poses significant risks.
Okay, so putting this all together, what does this mean strategically? What's the bigger picture takeaway from Japan choosing this particular path, especially when you look at, say, the EU's approach?
Yeah, that comparison is really instructive. This bill is clearly a major step for Japan, formalizing a national AI governance strategy. But when you put it next to something like the EU AI Act, wow, the contrast is pretty stark.
Right. The EU went for a very detailed, risk-based system with clear rules and penalties right from the start.
Yeah, exactly. Very prescriptive. Japan, on the other hand, is launching with what the article calls a soft law framework. It builds on guidance they already had, but the emphasis right now is strongly on principles, on voluntary compliance, on enabling innovation first. It's less command and control immediately.
More about creating the right environment, setting expectations.
That seems to be it. It's sending a signal, perhaps, that says, look, we really want to push AI development and use. We want to be competitive, but we are watching closely.
And we're ready to step in with tougher rules for the really risky stuff if we have to.
Yeah.
Is that the underlying message?
That appears to be the strategic calculation described in the source, yes. So for companies working in Japan, or thinking about it, the article suggests that while the immediate regulatory burden might be low, they absolutely need to keep an eye on how this national AI plan gets implemented
Right.
and watch for any related guidelines and definitely be aware that things could shift towards more enforceable regulations, especially around that high-risk category.
Okay, let's bring this back to you, our listener. Especially if you're maybe grappling with AI policy in your own work, perhaps thinking about using it or regulating it in public service somewhere. Why should you care about this specific bill in Japan?
Well, I mean, understanding these different global approaches is just so critical right now. Every country, every region is wrestling with this fundamental tension, aren't they?
Yeah.
How do you unlock all the amazing potential of AI for innovation, for the economy, for maybe even making public services better, while at the same time managing the very real risks, the ethical questions, the potential for harm?
And Japan's giving us one specific answer to that puzzle, a different model.
It really is. It's showing a model that starts with this soft law base, focusing on principles, encouraging voluntary uptake, trying to enable innovation, but crucially, holding back the possibility of tougher enforceable rules for high-risk situations later on.
Which is quite different from, say, the EU model that came in with more regulation up front.
Exactly. And seeing these different national experiments, like Japan's principle first strategy versus others, can be incredibly useful when you're thinking about policy back home.
Yeah, how might starting with principles shape things differently than starting with strict rules? What are the trade-offs for innovation, for safety, for public trust? If you're designing programs or rules that affect citizens, these different perspectives are really valuable food for thought.
Absolutely. Watching how these strategies play out worldwide gives us real world data on that complex balancing act between promoting AI and governing it responsibly.
So we've walked through the why behind Japan's AI bill. We've looked at the bill's actual structure and principles, touched on those important ethical considerations in the supplementary resolution, and sort of placed it strategically compared to other global efforts.
Yeah, it's really laying the groundwork, setting the stage for how Japan plans to handle AI going forward.
And it leaves us with a really interesting question to chew on, doesn't it? As AI keeps evolving everywhere, this bill starts with principles, with voluntary steps, but clearly keeps the option for stricter controls on high-risk AI later. How might these fundamentally different starting points, some nations going soft first, others hard, ultimately shape the global rules of the road for AI innovation, safety, and public acceptance in the coming years?
That's the big question, isn't it? Definitely something to keep thinking about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.